Justice, like lightning, is finally coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's right, a solo film revolving around the Thunderbolts has officially been announced, with filming supposedly beginning next summer. Comic fans are buzzing about the introduction of this team of villains turned heroes to the MCU, and it's been confirmed that several familiar faces will be returning for this movie. The Thunderbolts are some of my favorite characters in all of Marvel, so join me as I take a look at what the team's first MCU outing could look like. Alright, well, let's get the basics down first. Who exactly are the Thunderbolts? Well, they're a team of superheroes who first made their way onto the scene in the late 90s. Both the Avengers and the Fantastic Four had recently disappeared in a crisis. But luckily, the Thunderbolts were there to step in and become the world's newest protectors. The only problem was, it was all a sham. Behind the team's heroic costumes were the newest incarnation of the Masters of Evil, one of Marvel's most prolific villainous teams. The group was led by Baron Zemo, who'd hatched a diabolical plan for his team to pose as superheroes so that they could gain enough public and governmental trust to take over the world. It was honestly an ingenious plan, and no one saw it coming, both in the comic universe and in the real world. When the team's true identities were revealed, people's minds were absolutely blown, and there's probably no way a secret that big could be kept in this day and age. I mean, I was seeing Multiverse of Madness spoilers on forum pages like 2 years before that movie actually came out. Spoilers are just a part of fandom culture now, and there's no real way around it. Anyways, Zemo's scheme was a massive success, and the public fell in love with the Thunderbolts. The team was able to establish a connection with the mayor of New York through his aide Dallas Reardon. They added a few new members, and no one was any the wiser as to the team's true intentions. However, there was one important problem that began to arise around this time, and it would ultimately cause Zemo's plan to crash and burn. You see, some of the villains were realizing that they actually enjoyed being heroes. Zemo tried to ensure his team's loyalty by revealing their identities to the public, but they ultimately banded together to defeat him and went on the run. The Thunderbolts then became a roving group of fugitives, frequently shedding members and picking up new ones. Over the years, the team continued to pop up in various different forms, but it wasn't until 2006's Civil War event that we get their second most iconic iteration. The Thunderbolts were reconfigured as a government task force made up of villains wishing to avoid prison time, who were being sent to do missions too dangerous for anyone else. Sound familiar at all? What, are we some kinda the Thunderbolts? Yes, in recent years the team has essentially become Marvel's answer to the Suicide Squad, something that was even noted in the film's reveal. So which version of the Thunderbolts will we be seeing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Well, to answer that question, we'll first have to take a look and see which of our past villains might make up the team's roster. The penultimate episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier's first season introduced audiences to Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, a mysterious woman working for an unknown government agency. She approached John Walker at his lowest point and gave him the opportunity to reinvent himself as a US agent. And she also falsely tipped off Yelena Belova that Clint Barton killed Black Widow. These appearances feel similar to Nick Fury's various cameos across Phase 1 of the MCU, and it seems pretty clear that, similarly to him, she's also putting together a team. For some time there was a good amount of debate about whether Valentina was trying to form the Dark Avengers or the Thunderbolts, but now it seems all but certain to be the latter. Now, it's been confirmed that the film will star several villains who have previously appeared in the MCU, which is fantastic news. I and many other people have previously lamented the MCU's tendency to kill off their villains after only one appearance, especially considering how many great villainous teams there are in the Marvel Universe. Still, they have gotten somewhat better at keeping their villains alive over the years, and there's a couple of key ones that I think are pretty obvious candidates for the team. Let's start off with the two characters we've seen Valentina talk to in the MCU. First of all, we got John Walker. After his stint as the new Captain America went horribly wrong, he was replaced with Sam Wilson, and he's basically become persona non grata in the eyes of both the public and the government. However, clearly Val sees John's potential despite his instability, gifting him a new costume in the final episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now operating under the name US Agent, it's a safe bet that we'll see John as the Captain America equivalent on the Thunderbolts, and it'll be interesting to see just how he reckons with the continued fallout of his actions as Cap. On the other hand, the situation with Yelena is a bit more complicated. The post-credit scene for Black Widow seemed to indicate that she'd be a straightforward member of Val's team, but the Hawkeye series showed her making amends with Clint Barton and questioning why she'd been sent to kill him. While I do believe Yelena will still be serving as a member of the Thunderbolts, her interactions with the rest of the team are bound to be pretty interesting, considering Val straight up lied to her face to get her to kill Hawkeye. This distrust of their leader could be the thing that ultimately leads to the team's downfall, especially if it turns out they have a deeper villainous scheme up their sleeves. Those are our two biggest possible candidates, but there's several other MCU villains that I expect to play a significant role in the Thunderbolts movie. The most important of these villains is Baron Zemo, who we first met in Captain America Civil War and were reintroduced to in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. While we haven't actually seen Val approach him for the team, this arch-villain was integral to the Thunderbolts' existence in the comics, so I'm gonna say he's another lock for the team. He's one of Marvel Studios' biggest villains who's still alive, and his appearances on Disney Plus prove that he is willing to work on the side of good, as long as it suits his agenda. Another possible member is Taskmaster, who we last saw being freed from her father's mind control and escaping into the world in Black Widow. One of the biggest criticisms surrounding the character's appearance in that film was that she was reduced to a wordless, mindless killing machine, a far cry from the comics' wisecracking mercenary. A return in the Thunderbolts movie would provide the opportunity to give Taskmaster the character development that she was so sorely lacking, and it would be interesting to see how she and Yelena would interact as teammates, considering the fact that they both originate from the Red Room. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings reintroduced us to Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination. The Gamma-mutated villain served as the main antagonist to the Incredible Hulk, but it would end up being almost 15 years before we'd see him again in the MCU. Considering the fact that he was pretty buddy-buddy with Wong and Shang-Chi, it seems Emil may have already started to make amends with the hero community, but we'll have to wait for She-Hulk Attorney at Law to really see just what he's been up to. I think Blonsky would be another logical recruit for the Thunderbolts, especially considering he's already being held by the government. Every good team needs a big strong bruiser, and Abomination fills that quota perfectly. Okay, well, those are a couple of big names where I feel pretty confident in predicting that they'll appear in the Thunderbolts movie, but let me just rapid fire through a couple of other names here. These are characters where I wouldn't be surprised if they appeared in the movie, but they wouldn't exactly be my main choices either. And there's a couple of names in there that I threw in just for fun because I've seen them be suggested online, but I think that they're very unlikely. First off, the Winter Soldier. Sure, he was a major member of several versions of the team in the comics, but frankly, I feel like Bucky Barnes has come too far in the MCU to work with a pack of scoundrels like this. Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp. She's got a cool and scary superpower which could prove incredibly useful to the team, but trying to justify her presence there might be a little bit iffy. Maybe, in exchange for their membership, they could give her some sort of cure that would stabilize her intangibility. Justin Hammer, maybe, although I think it's more likely we'll see his daughter Justine. Big Wheel, probably not a realistic choice. Titania from She-Hulk, maybe, haven't seen the show yet, but she seems like she could be a safe bet. Vulture, probably not. He's off getting his Morb on.
Intriguing.
Well, that's a pretty solid potential roster we've got, but now we do have to confront the elephant in the room. How does Marvel ensure that this film stands apart from the Suicide Squad movies? Task Force X has become one of DC Comics' most valuable commodities, with 2 films and a TV series having focused on its members. As such, the Thunderbolts film is destined to be closely compared to the Suicide Squad, and while these comparisons are understandable on the surface level, there's a lot Marvel can do to differentiate them. It all really depends on one question. Why does the team exist in the MCU? Like we talked about previously, the Thunderbolts have had a number of different motivations over the years, but my personal favorite is their original goal, to take over the world by posing as superheroes. It's such a bold and diabolical plan, one of those schemes that's crazy enough that it just might work. Unfortunately, I don't really see the MCU going down that path. Baron Zemo is currently being kept under lock and key at the Raft, and I don't really think it's likely that he'd be up to any grand schemes, especially since he willingly gave himself up in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If anything, Zemo's probably going to be a somewhat unwilling participant who's only along because it might serve his best interests. All signs point to the government putting this team together in the MCU, even down to the name. General Thunderbolt Ross was a minor yet important recurring character for years, but his actor William Hurt recently passed away. I'm guessing that, in-universe, Ross will pass away as well, and the Thunderbolts will be named in tribute to him. So yeah, it seems pretty clear that the group will be a government-sponsored team sent out to do mysterious missions. But whereas the Suicide Squad is sent out to do jobs that are either too dangerous or too controversial for other superheroes to do, I think the Thunderbolts should be presented as full-on heroes. We can take a bit of inspiration from both the group's original incarnation and their modern reinterpretation, as a group of former villains having reformed and rebranded themselves as heroes. Keep in mind, no one really knows what exactly the status of the Avengers is after Endgame, but the world is gonna need a superhero team to keep it safe. Enter Val and the Thunderbolts, ready to save the world on the US government's terms. Sure, we lose that great original twist this way, but the way I see it, introducing the group as a bunch of bad guys turned good and basically forcing them to become the new Avengers is the best way to have them stand out from the Suicide Squad, as well as helping them make an indelible mark on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Hey everyone, I'm Matt Sonnack. I made this video and I'd like to thank you for watching. Who would you like to see join the MCU's Thunderbolts? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more fun comic book content. See you next time!